Leave me alone. Yo.
What is popping?
What's up, my man?
I'm road going right now, so I'm just going to mute my mic and just listen to you through my vehicle.
Hey. All right, that sounds good.
All right.
I gave up halfway through.
Look at those feathers.
Courtesy of Ben Tyree.
You got your Hawaiian shirt on, though?
No, sadly, I just have a church shirt on that I put on, and I was like, I don't feel like doing anything else. I was going to wear a prom suit from like 3 years ago, but that junk too big.
That would be
Look like
awesome.
I'm wearing a business suit dress. Look, I even got the bike to go with it. Like, I got a little cruiser bike.
Little kitty cat.
Little kitty cat, Stefan. Come to daddy.
Got your road dog. That's a cat.
He thinks look, he acts like a dog. I could literally sit over here and whistle at him and he'll come to me. Hang on. For instance,
Ava, what's up?
Ava, where's your fancy attire?
I didn't put on fancy attire.
Like, where's Stefan? Come here, baby. Oh, baby.
I don't think I have anything fancy.
Let's. I need to move the feathers to the front.
Yeah, you do. Or to the side. Jacob,
Hey, buddy.
did you have a good birthday?
It was pretty good, yeah.
You got takeout
I did.
because you can't go anywhere. Hey,
Hey,
Nick, where's your fancy clothes?
where's my fancy clothes?
Everybody's.
This only has one bleach stain on it, so it's fancy.
you're wearing
Pretty
loafers.
fancy. I am wearing loafers.
Right now, I'm just Danny and Dustin.
I'm so fancy, these are my yard loafers.
Ninny's wearing the straps.
Kenny
There's
Sue's
Nick.
riding on the bike.
Ninny!
I'm coming up to the trailer, Sesh, because it wouldn't be a youth session if I'm not at the trailer.
I approve of
You want
the
me to go
feathers
get
on the
that
side. Most definitely.
I don't think they're gonna have it.
You saying it looks fire on the side?
It does.
That's right.
Do people say, do you say on fleek anymore?
Now it's on point or fresh.
Oh,
Oh crap! I forgot to do my British accent.
We said that. We said that when I was in high school, though.
Icy is a new one.
No,
about
Icy's not new.
Okay, well, I don't know.
You young whippersnappers, you think you're so cool with your new words.
Bring
We're
it back.
literally killing the game, love. We're literally killing the game, love.
Where's what?
All right. We'll give it a few more minutes, and then I have a game. Everett Jones. It's not as fun as the game that we've been playing, or that we've played. But Aiden, where have you been?
I want to see my buddy Aiden.
You've been somewhere.
Daddy, can I go outside and get my toys?
Yeah.
Aiden looking fresh.
Can't hardly see him. I just see a head.
Look,
All right.
follows me everywhere. Come on.
All right. Charlie, wait. So somebody tell me, what's the most interesting thing that you've done today? Aiden has a
Built the
story.
casket for
Say, me and Stone have been planning a funeral for a fish. all day.
Hey,
Y'all want to hear?
All right.
Actually, no. I'm gonna save my speech.
all right.
Just know I wrote a very emotional speech about this fish.
Y'all are going to post a video this weekend?
Mm-hmm.
Just go Facebook Live on Saturday when y'all do it. Or Friday.
We've
when
got
we do
to. We've got to edit it, and so we can put the music in.
All right. All right. Hey, I'm gonna keep it shorter tonight. But I've got a game. Y'all aren't gonna like it as much, but I thought it would be kind of fun because y'all are in school and you need to get some learning. All right. So this game is called, oh snap, I didn't want to show you that title graphic. All right, so this game's called So You Think You Can Homeschool, right? Because we used to poke fun at all the homeschoolers, but that they were weird, and all the girls wore dresses, and all the boys wore blue jeans and leather jackets. No, you never did that? I did, all right? So, but now we're all homeschooled, so joke's on all of us. So anyway.
This is what I wear to school every day.
So you think you can homeschool. So this is like just trivia questions. If you think you know the answer, shout it out. And number one, when is an atom stable? A, when it has
B.
full outer orbit. B, when it has the same amount of electrons as
B.
protons. It's B?
Yeah.
What does everybody think? Who says B?
Me.
B.
Who says A? Can't see your face, just shout me. What does Jake say?
A. I say A.
Jake says A,
Yeah, I say A.
and smack, it's A. That was hard.
I can't
This was
believe I
hard
got that
too.
one wrong.
Who's the 28th president of the United States of America?
28. What are we on right now? 50 something?
I have no idea.
I'm gonna go,
I'm gonna go-
and say Woodrow Wilson.
I'm going B.
All right, B. Anybody say Hoover? Teddy?
If I'm not mistaken,
And-
Hoover was trash.
Smack, it was Wilson.
I'm 2 for 2.
Somebody's scribbling. I can't take it off of there. All right, so here we go. Largest city in Canada.
No.
Toronto.
Cody says Toronto.
I'm going to say C.
Jake says Montreal.
No.
I thought Montreal was in like France.
No, my man. So nobody said Vancouver.
Somebody circled it.
Calgary. And smack, it's Toronto. Also, isn't it the cleanest city in the world or something like that?
I'm not sure.
All right. Here's one. Every time I cook, I try to figure this out.
I think it's 8 because it's 4
And-
quarts. It's 4 quarts is 1 gallon, and then yeah, it's 8.
Yeah.
You're so smart.
A.
Smack. All right, let's speed it along. What is the primary function of leaves?
Keep your toys out of the kitchen.
Provide shade and protection, food for insects, gather light,
It's D.
get rid of excess water that enters through the roots.
I think it's D.
C.
Jake says C. What does Nick
Oh, it
say?
might be C. It might be C. It's either C or D.
Mac, it's C. All right.
Jake, this is
I
infamous
thought it was
wisdom.
toy. circulate the oxygen and stuff.
It's,
I don't know about
I thought
that.
that's what they did.
All right, I did not know this. What is the complementary color of blue-green on the color wheel? Didn't even know what a color wheel was until Kelsey told me like 4
Jesse,
months
what's
ago.
the complementary color of
I'm
blue,
gonna
green
say
on the color wheel?
C. Yeah, C. Maybe C.
Blue. Yellow.
Quit playing like you know you don't know.
Orange.
Red,
Red,
orange.
orange.
All right, last one. Y'all don't like it. I knew you wouldn't. Last one. The largest organ in the
C.
human body.
It's skin.
C.
But how long is your small intestine? Didn't they say that it's like
It can like wrap around the planet like 4 times, I think.
No,
I
no.
hope Ben didn't see that.
no?
It's like, I think it's like 12 or 14 feet.
That's a lot of guts.
I thought it was like 2 miles. Or a mile.
And
But then
Matt,
C.
it's
I'm sorry.
Don't touch that.
Cody just saying it could wrap around the planet twice.
Cody
Yeah, that's what he
said
said.
that
4 times.
Cody said his guts could go around the world 4 times, pretty much is what he said.
That is
All right.
what's up, my guy.
All right, I'm about to put you all on mute, and we'll talk for a minute, and then I'll talk for a minute, and then we'll all talk again. So, in 3, 2, 1, and you are silent. All right, so we're going to be in Romans chapter 1, verses 8 through 15, and just leading in, we're going to be finding out more information about Paul and kind of who he was. And there's one thing about Paul, if you could summarize his character, right, in one word, it was that he was passionate, right? He was a very zealous person. And passion, we've heard passion, like the passion of the Christ, right? Passion in, relationships, but a definition for passion is an intense desire or enthusiasm for something. And Paul had an intense desire, right? He was enthusiastic about his walk with Jesus, and telling people about his relationship with Christ. And so he was passionate about the gospel. And I don't know, that just got me to thinking, like, I truly believe that every single one of us, that we're passionate about something, right? Now, and I'm not talking about like a boyfriend or a girlfriend or like food or money or something like that, but I don't know. I would like for you to think to yourselves, what is something in your life that you're enthusiastic about, right? That when, I don't know, it comes up in a conversation, you can't keep quiet about it. You gotta, you talk about it. And you tell your friends about it. You want to do it or whatever it is. Like for me, one of the things I love to talk about is, other than my wife and kids, is I love talking about baseball, right? I love talking about the mechanics of hitting, and I like talking about lifting weights, and so what are those things? Or music, I love nobody. I'm the only person that I know that has good taste in music, and so when I get to educate people on what good music is, like I love that, right? I'm enthusiastic about music. So I mean, what are you passionate about? Like what? And I believe we all have something that we're passionate about. And I believe that God has given us things that we're passionate about, and I believe that we can use those things, right, to spread His name and to spread His glory. We can use the things that we're passionate about for His good and for His glory, right? And Paul did that. And so in Romans, I'm just going to read it. Romans chapter 1, verses 8 through 15, right? It says this: "First, I thank my God through Jesus Christ for all of you, because your faith is proclaimed in all the world. For God is my witness, whom I serve with my spirit in the gospel of His Son, that without ceasing I mention you, always in my prayers, asking that somehow by God's will I may now at last succeed in coming to you." And so what that just told us is that Paul's never been to this church, right? He's never met these people with his own eyes. He's just heard about them. And so he's writing them, having never met them, to encourage them and strengthen them, as we'll find out. And so he says, that I may now at last succeed in coming to you, for I long to see you, that I may impart to you some spiritual gift to strengthen you. That is, that we may be mutually encouraged by each other's faith, both yours and mine. I do not want you to be unaware, brothers and sisters, that I have often intended to come to you, but have thus far been prevented, in order that I may reap some harvest among you as well as among the rest of the Gentiles. I am under obligation both to Greeks and to barbarians, both to the wise and to the foolish. So I'm eager to preach the gospel to you also who are in Rome. And so there are four things that Paul mentions in here that we see about Paul that I want to talk about. Then I want to talk about how that applies to us. So the first thing, right, your first word is reach. Reach, because Paul's talking about, reaching out to them, that he wants to go to them. He wants to, in verse 15, he says he's eager to preach the gospel, right? He talks about he wants to reap a harvest, and he's reaching out to them through this letter, through writing to them. And so, we see that Paul is all about reaching people for Christ, right? He's all about evangelism. He's all about, what we call reaching out. And here's the thing. We should all be about that business because it's important to Jesus, right? I mean, the last thing that he told the disciples was to go, therefore, to all nations, right? Making disciples, baptizing them, teaching them. And so we have a commandment to go, right? And here's the thing. If Jesus has saved our soul, if he saved our life, right, and given us new life, I mean, that should jazz us up, right? We should be excited to tell people about what Jesus is doing in our life, sharing our story, like the not enough videos, but the Easter videos that everybody put out. And, it's scary when we're doing that. It's uncomfortable. But I think that everybody that did a video, like if you went and talked to them and asked them if they regret doing it, I bet nobody would say no. If they were encouraged by it, I think everybody would say yes, because all the videos that I saw had like 100-something views and all these comments of people thanking them for sharing their story. And so here's the thing. I mean, it's like that in real life too, even though we can't see each other face to face, right? But it's like you get kind of nervous, and it's like, but when you step out there and you do it, you share your story, it lands somewhere, right? Yeah, but it's a little, getting on a roller coaster is a little nerve-wracking, but roller coasters that's the business, you know what I'm saying? And it's the same way when we share our faith and when we step out. And so I read this story about this guy who went to China as a missionary, and he was a doctor. And so he got hooked up with this Chinese hospital, and he started to practice in this Chinese hospital. And one of the first surgeries that he did was a man came in, and he was just about blind with cataracts. And so they did eye surgery on this guy, and this Chinese man. Then they cut him loose. And a few weeks later, 48 blind men showed up at the hospital looking for this doctor, right? Because they wanted to also have their sight restored. They traveled 250 miles from a remote village in China. And the way they made it there was they all held on to the same rope, right? These 48 guys, they all held on to the same rope. And the guy in front leading all the men was that blind man that had had surgery and had his sight restored. And so the two things about that story is this. There were blind men who wanted their sight. They had a desire to get their sight back and to see. And then there was a man who had gotten his sight back, and he cared enough to take the other blind men to go to get their sight restored. And so, what that means for us is, hey, we were blind. We were dead in our trespasses and sins, as Scripture says. And for those of us who have given our life to Christ, and for those of us who are saved, we found our sight. We found life. And we should care enough that there are people that we know who are blind. There are people that we know who they're not believers, right? They're still enemies of God. They're still in their sins. And so we need to take them to where they can get their sight, or we know where to take them in order for them to be saved. And so it has to do with us reaching out, right? It's necessary for us as believers to care enough to reach out, because it's out of a love, and not out of obligation, but it's out of a love for Jesus, right? Because of what he's done for us, that we tell others, about what he's done. And so reach. So in here we see that Paul is all about evangelism. He's all about reaching. And the second thing is connect, right? The second thing is connect, because in verse 10, Romans 1:10, it says, always in my prayers, asking that somehow by God's will, I may now last succeeding coming to you. So he wants to see them, right? He just says that he's been praying for them. For I long to see you, that I may impart some spiritual gift to you. He says to strengthen you, right? And then he says that we may be mutually encouraged. So he talks about encouraging one another. And and let's see. And this says, I don't want you to be unaware, brothers, that I've often tended to come to you, that I may reap a harvest among you as among the rest of the Gentiles. So he talks about coming to them. He talks about, praying for them, wanting to strengthen them, wanting to encourage them. Like he's talking about connecting with them, right? And here's the thing. It's awesome if we hand out a bunch of, if we have like a youth revival and we hand out a bunch of flyers and we get like a ton of kids to come eat pizza and to sit in the pews, right, and listen to Danny Lanier. But here's the thing, if that's all we do and that's where it stops, then man, we've missed it. Because they're going to come in the door, eat pizza, hear a sermon, and then they're going to leave and they're not going to come back. But how do we get people to stay, right? How do we develop relationships? What comes through that connection? And here's the thing, we all need each other. We all need to connect to one another, right? To strengthen one another, to encourage one another. And I think we're feeling that more than ever now, during this bananas time that we're living in. And I found some. So here's what I want to do for next week. Okay, I'm the only one that dressed up. Like I thought this might happen. I feel like an idiot. But anyway, I look good though. No, I'm sorry I said that. I take it back. I don't look good at all. But so for next week, I want to do a contest of best Corona meme, right? Best Corona meme. And I found one that's hilarious. And I'm sorry, it's got potty humor, but that's only because I live with a 7-year-old who thinks that crap is hilarious. And but I found a couple of these memes that I want to. Anyway, I think these and you've seen stuff like this. It's just people are dying for some kind of connection that's not digital. And so this is one that I saw, right? This guy staring at this wall saying, I used to kill these ants. Now with quarantine, they have become my closest friends, right? And anyway, because, this guy, he's stuck in the house, can't talk to his friends, so he's talking to ants. This one was pretty funny, I thought. This is my favorite one out of these, all right? So coronavirus had all these consequences, no school, everybody's at home, boo online class, everybody's panicking, events canceled, you can't go anywhere, and then it's like a dolphin, my already dwindling mental health. So it's like, so in essence, like what people are saying there is, I'm falling apart without my friends, I'm bored out of my mind, I don't know what to do. And I've seen, I tried to find Miss Leslie Williams posted something online about all these babies hugging each other, and it was like when we finally meet again after quarantine, and that's just how it is, right? I mean, I can't wait to, to shake hands, and got a couple of guys in the church that I hug. Man, I miss that, and I think we're all kind of like that. Because here's the thing, we're feeling more than ever that we need one another, right? We need to be in community with one another, because here's the thing, we're made for that. We're not made for this digital world that we're living in right now. We are made to be face to face with one another, encouraging one another, right? Just as Paul talks about. I mean, you can, if you're like, I don't know if you've ever seen in the prison shows and stuff, when people get put in solitary confinement and they have no social interaction with anyone, they're stuck in the same room for 23 hours, they go freaking nuts, because we need one another, right? And so if it's true for a lost world during the quarantine, then it's absolutely true for believers all the time. It's especially true for believers that we're made for community. And so here's what I want to ask. Here's what I want to ask you to do. Whenever we are able to come back and meet together again, let's not forget this feeling of how much we need one another, how much we need this connection with one another, right? So when we, and that's for our buddies, and that's for the people that we talk to a little bit, and even for the strangers that we don't know that roll into youth group on a random Wednesday night, right? That we need one another. We need to be connected to one another, right? And so anyway, thanks, Jake. I just saw your chat. And so we see in the connection, there's prayers, there's strengthening, there's encouragement. And so we see reach, we see connect. Jake probably knows where I'm going by now. And the third thing we see is grow, right? Because look, aspects of growth are praying for one another, right? Us praying. Aspects for growth is strengthening one another. Aspects of growth is encouraging one another. We should be maturing and growing in these things, not backtracking, right? Not getting worse. We should be praying for one another, building one another up. We should be encouraging one another, not the opposite as we're so prone to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, instead of praying for one another and lifting one another up to Jesus, we like to cut each other down and talk about each other. Right? I'm not talking about anybody in particular in here. I'm not trying to bust anybody out. But not dragging each other down, right, behind each other's back, but we're taking, do you know why Jesus told his disciples to pray for your enemies, right? To love those who hate you, pray for your enemies. Because, and I've done this, so I know it firsthand that it's hard. It's hard for you to hate somebody when you're taking them to Jesus and you're asking for God to bless them, right? And you're asking for God to watch over them and protect them. When you're asking for God to move in their life and bring them to a saving knowledge of Him, right? It's hard to continue to hate somebody when you're praying for them like that. And so, in our growth, we should be praying for one another, and then that's before Christ, and we should be building one another up. That's face to face, right? Speaking encouraging words to one another, because here's the thing. I mean, I don't know, maybe you have great parents, right? And I'm sure a lot of you do, and hope you have great friends. But how many times in a week's time do you have somebody come and pat you on the back or put their arm around you? Not lately, right? 6 feet, but and tell you like how good of a job you're doing and how much they appreciate you, right? I think we don't do that very often. And here's the thing, like, and for me, even though when people do that to me, I'm like, yeah. In my mind, I'm just like, you really don't know how stupid I am, right? If you knew like how dumb I was and that was just luck that I did something right, then you wouldn't be saying all this stuff. But it's in those times when people tell me stuff like that I realize how much I need it. And I think we're all like that, that we need people to come alongside and encourage us and build us up. And it's like Brother Scott has said 1,000 times, it's important for us to be not discouragers, which is so easy to do, so easy for me to do, but for us to be encouragers, right, and grow and build one another up. And so anyway, and so we see reach. Paul is all about reaching. We see connecting, right? Paul is all about connecting. And then we see growth. And then the last thing that we see is serve, right? Your last word is serve, because verse 11, Paul says, "For I long to see you, that I may impart to you some spiritual gift to strengthen you." And then again, in verse 15, he talks about being eager to preach the gospel. in verse 13, he says that he has wanted to come in order that he may reap some harvest, right? So we see action, right? We see intensity. Paul wanted to serve this church by strengthening them. And when it talks about imparting a spiritual gift, I don't think that means that, like, I like the gift of tongues or prophecy, like, and nobody had that gift. And then Paul showed up and he's like, oh, well, let me pray, or I've got the gift of prophecy right here in my pocket and I'll give it to you. I think it's more fruits of the Spirit. I think it's more Paul spending time with these people and helping them along to maturity, I think, is what this imparting a spiritual gift was. And so Paul is saying, I want to come and I want to serve you, right? I want to show you. And not just inside the church, but he wanted to serve the unbelievers also, because he talks about reaping a harvest, right, among the lost, preaching the gospel to those who are in Rome. And so we see, that Paul wanted to serve believers and unbelievers, and he wanted to serve them to maturity and to salvation. And so here's the thing. Work is necessary. It's joked that 10% of the people in church do 90% of the work, and just being a person that kind of sees things behind closed doors. And I know Jake and Courtney can attest to this also. It's true, man. You get the same handful of folks that do just about everything. And, and what is it? Like, what's the problem? And I think a big reason is that people think, well, I give my life to Christ, I'm saved, and I'm going to church. And so, that's it. I'm doing good. But listen, man, if all God wanted us to do on this earth was get saved, then, as I told you, I think last week, he would take us to heaven whenever we gave our lives to him. But he leaves us here for a reason, man. That's because he has a mission and a purpose for us. That's because he has a job for us, right? He has service for us. And it's not like begrudging or tedious, right? Working, doing stuff for the church, it can be difficult in some seasons, but man, it's rewarding because God blesses you. And so here's the thing, like, when we work, we're exercised, right? We're growing, as that growth is, we're maturing. But when we're sedentary, when we're still, when we're inactive, hey, do y'all know what muscle atrophy is? Like, I learned about this when my granddad became bedridden, right? He laid in the bed for, I think, 2 years maybe before before he passed away. And that dude withered up to hardly nothing. He was just skin and bone, because he moved so little that his muscles just shrank until at some point, if he wanted to get out of the bed, he couldn't, right? Because he didn't have the skeleton, the muscle to support that kind of movement. And so here's the thing: if we just laid in the bed all day and never got up, then me too. Then our muscles would they'd shrink, right? They would atrophy. And there's only 3 ways that we can bring. They say there's 3 ways that you can treat muscle atrophy, right? You can treat it through stimulation, right? If you've ever been to the what do they call it? The physical therapist, they'll put that little shock thing on you and shock your muscles, right? They'll do that to kind of bring those muscles back to life. Or they'll do physical therapy, right? Get you walking a little bit, get you up moving, get you running to strengthen those muscles. Or something more drastic is through surgery, right? They'll go in, they'll take muscle from somewhere else and stick it in there. But here's the thing. I'm saying this: when we begin to atrophy, something needs to happen to bring us back, right? To reverse that. And so in the same way, like, hey, a lot of us, man, we're just sitting back in the church pews and we are atrophying, right? So we're called to reach. We're called to connect to one another. We're called to grow. Hey, and we're not called to sit back on our hands, We're not called to lay up, on the couch eating potato chips and just watching everybody else do the work. God's called us, whatever we talked about, that passion, whatever that thing that God has given us that we're enthusiastic about, right? God's given us that thing. Hey, we're to use that for him, right? And so let's be passionate about, as a youth group, as we come back together, right? Let's be passionate about reaching, about connecting, about growing, and about serving, right? And let's let everything that we do, Knox, man, everything that we do individually, as a youth group, and as a church, let's be passionate about reaching, connecting, growing, and serving. And so, not to toot my own horn or anything, but I did make this thing. I'm thinking about making a T-shirt of it. Jake said he liked it, so if you're interested in this, then I don't know, text me your size because I'm gonna pull a trigger on this pretty soon. But so I made this because I want this to be ever before us, that we're all about reaching, connecting, growing, and serving, right? And we're not just coming to church and hearing Bible study and then going home, but everything that we do is these 4 things is like a filter. Everything that we do is about either one or all of these 4 things. And so anyway, so I'm going to unmute you because we are almost out of time. And so 3, 2, 1. Okay, I have one more thing. And this is some bad news, but you've known it's coming, right? I got an email from Fuge last week. I don't need to tell you what it is. You already know they canceled Fuge for June. And so thought through different options. And I think the best one for us, where we get to keep all of our money and not lose a couple $1,000s, is to just transfer everything over to next summer. Now, Cody, before you begin to weep, if you are a senior, I'm going to extend. So next year, if you're a senior this year and you'll be a freshman in college next year, come with us, right? Because I don't want you to miss out. College students go to Fuge every year, but it's our policy that we're just 7th through 12th grade. But if you're a senior, we're still down to take you if you want to go. If you don't want to be a student, then you can just we'll have some extra leaders. You can be my leaders in training or something. I don't know. But anyway, so that's the news. And I'll be sending more information out to your parents because I know they want to know more about it. So anyway, you're unmuted in 3, 2, 1. Hey.
Hey.
We got 2 minutes.
On Blast from the Past, look what I found.
Fidget spinner. Aiden Hall's the first one I ever saw that had one of those. And they gave it to me. G became crazy. But that's something else, like a flash in the pan thing. People don't do that anymore now.
These the structure of it's mine, but I stole these lights from Ben, and he's definitely going to come in my room as soon as this is over and ask for it back.
Give my fidget spinner. Hey, so Knox, what's up, bro? You called me yesterday, but you wouldn't talk to me. Hurt my feelings. So, hey, for real, for next week, the competition I want to do is best Corona meme, right? So save it, send it to me. I'll make a slideshow, and I'll play the slideshow at our next Zoom meeting. We'll all vote, and if you best one, you get a prize. I told you, just disclaimer, I already have one, a little bit of potty humor, but that's the world I live in because my son thinks that farts are just the funniest thing in the world, and I don't get it. But this one's funny, though. This one's funny. All right. So anyway, that's it. Y'all have anything? Less than a minute before I think Zoom's going to kick me off. So anything? You. This camera. All right. Hey, I love you guys. Just know phone's always on for you. My office door is not, right, because we can't, but my phone is on. We need to talk. But anyway, love you dudes and dudettes. And see you later.
Deuces.
See ya.
Bye.